The vibrant glow of monitors in Pixel Forge Studios' development pit was my second home. For 7 years, I, Jia Li, had poured my soul into creating Aethelgard, a revolutionary open-world RPG that promised to redefine the genre. Aethelgard wasn't just a game. It was a living, breathing digital realm, meticulously crafted with a groundbreaking procedural generation engine and a dynamic AI that made every NPC feel real. My team and I, a small, dedicated group of designers and programmers, had just completed its closed beta, receiving rave reviews from industry insiders. Even Mr. Silas Croft, Pixel Forge's notoriously demanding CEO, had offered a rare, genuine smile during the project demo, his eyes gleaming at the projected sales figures. Life in that moment felt like a perfectly balanced skill tree. My relationships with my core team were built on camaraderie and shared late-night pizza. We were a family, battling bugs and celebrating breakthroughs. I had a particularly strong professional bond with Brody Kane, the head of marketing and monetization. Brody, with his slick presentations and uncanny ability to predict market trends, often sat in on our design meetings, discussing how Aethelgard could dominate the gaming world. Our synergy was undeniable, a partnership built on mutual ambition and a shared vision for Pixel Forge's future. The first subtle crack appeared not from a direct confrontation, but from a growing, unsettling distance from Brody. He became evasive, his usual open discussions replaced by hushed phone calls and closed-door meetings with corporate. He started rescheduling our critical strategy sessions, citing confidential publisher negotiations. It was a subtle shift, but the unease was a persistent low hum. Like a distant server fan spinning too fast, the true blow, however, was delivered with devastating precision. I was summoned to Silas Croft's opulent, minimalist office, a space filled with expensive, abstract gaming memorabilia overlooking the sprawling city. Croft sat behind his gleaming glass desk, his face a mask of calm authority. Opposite him, radiating an unsettling smugness, sat Brody Kane. My stomach clenched, a cold dread washing over me. Croft began, his voice devoid of its usual measured tone. We've decided to re-strategize Project Aethelgard's launch, effective immediately. Its continued development and final release will be managed under a new global engagement division, headed by Mr. Kane. I stared, incredulous. Re-strategize. Silas, Aethelgard is my design. I spearheaded every line of code, every artistic direction, every core mechanic. My team built this from the ground up. Brody interjected, his voice sickeningly smooth. With all due respect, while your technical foundation was impressive, the true market vision, the monetization strategy, and the crucial publisher relationships, that's where my expertise truly comes in. We're simply optimizing its path to market, ensuring maximum profitability and player engagement. Optimizing. My voice was rising now, a tremor of indignation I couldn't suppress. You wouldn't even have a game to optimize without years of my painstaking development and innovation. This is my intellectual property, my unique game engine. Croft leaned forward, his eyes like chips of obsidian. Jia, your employment contract clearly states that all intellectual property developed during your tenure at Pixel Forge Studios belongs to the company. Mr. Kane has presented a compelling case for how his division can best leverage Aethelgard's market potential. This is a business decision approved by the board. A business decision. That's what they called stealing someone's life's work. The culmination of years of creative labor, code, and countless design documents. The betrayal felt like a critical hit, a punch to the gut that left me winded. Brody Kane, the man I'd considered a partner, sat there, radiating triumph. It wasn't just about the game, it was about the years of trust, the shared vision, the camaraderie that had evaporated in an instant. My reputation, my credibility within the industry, my very professional identity were being stripped away, exposed as naive and easily exploited. The humiliation deepened when, later that day, I received an official memo stating that I was being reassigned to legacy game maintenance, effectively sidelining me to a forgotten server room filled with outdated hardware. Far from any cutting-edge development, my access to Aethelgard's core code repositories was revoked. My development team dispersed, and my state-of-the-art workstation, once a hub of creativity, was now Brody's. The silence in that new, dusty room was deafening, broken only by the hum of ancient servers and the echo of Croft's cold pronouncement and Brody's self-satisfied smirk. The devastation was complete. It wasn't just a career setback. It was a profound personal affront, a deep wound to my sense of justice and creative worth. My first instinct, once the initial shock wore off, was to fight through official channels. I scheduled a meeting with Ms. Davies, Pixel Forge's head of HR. Davies was a by-the-book corporate professional, known for her unyielding adherence to company policy. I laid out my case, presenting the development timelines, the detailed code, commits, the design documents, the emails detailing my intellectual contribution to Aethelgard. I even showed her the rare congratulatory email from Croft himself. Davies listened patiently, nodding occasionally, her expression impassive. When I finished, she sighed. "Jia, I understand your frustration. However, company policy is explicit. All intellectual property developed within Pixel Forge Studios belongs to Pixel Forge. Mr. Kane's new division is a strategic imperative for the firm's growth. Your reassignment is, frankly, a positive move, allowing you to focus on new, equally important historical initiatives." Equally important initiatives. I scoffed, my voice tight with disbelief. "You mean a corporate graveyard where my skills are wasted and I'm kept far away from anything of actual value?" "That's a matter of perspective, Jia," she said, her voice softening, but her resolve unyielding. "My advice to you is to accept this change gracefully and look for opportunities within your new role. Pursuing this further will only make things more difficult for you and potentially damage your future career prospects within the highly competitive gaming industry." Her words were a polite dismissal, a chilling confirmation that the system, designed to protect the company, would never protect me from the company itself. My attempts to seek justice through legal or HR channels were met with a wall of corporate boilerplate and a thinly veiled threat. Legal action seemed a daunting, expensive, and ultimately futile endeavor against a gaming titan like Pixel Forge, especially with an ironclad employment contract. I was on my own, adrift in a sea of corporate indifference and calculated betrayal. But as I sat in that desolate server room, the distant sounds of excited chatter from the active development floors, a cruel reminder of what I'd lost. A new emotion began to simmer beneath the surface of my grief. Cold, unyielding fury. My path for justice would not be through official channels. It would be forged in the shadows, meticulous and precise, and it would leave them, Croft and Brody, with nothing but a crashed game. The initial shock had calcified into a diamond-hard resolve. Ms. Davies' polite dismissal, the solid wall of Pixel Forge's corporate policy, only strengthened my conviction. I would find justice, but it wouldn't be on their terms. My new role, in legacy game maintenance intended to bury me in obsolescence, became my unexpected sanctuary, a hidden space where I could plot my revenge unnoticed. They had underestimated me. They had given me time, and more importantly, they had left me with limited but crucial access to the company's vast development servers and archived project files. My strategic assessment began with a forensic dive into the very heart of Pixel Forge Studios. Croft and Brody were my immediate targets, but I needed to understand the entire ecosystem of their deceit. What were their vulnerabilities? What secrets were they desperately trying to bury beneath their meticulously crafted facades of corporate success? My leverage, I realized, wouldn't come from legal precedent. but from the unseen weaknesses within their technical infrastructure and the concealed rot in their professional ethics and product integrity. My first move was to discreetly reconnect with Kai Sato, a brilliant but quiet junior programmer whom I had mentored for years. Kai was fiercely loyal, and his quiet outrage at my treatment was palpable. We met for coffee at a nondescript arcade, the nervous energy between us almost tangible amidst the flashing lights and arcade sounds, I explained, in carefully chosen words, the bare bones of what had happened with Aethelgard. Kai's eyes widened with a mix of shock and anger. That's an absolute travesty, Jia. Everyone knows Aethelgard was your masterpiece. I need your help, Kai, I said, leaning closer. I need to know everything about the new Global Engagement Division's development pipeline. Code commits, bug reports, server performance logs, anything that shows what they're really doing with Aethelgard. Kai, initially hesitant due to the risk, eventually nodded, his jaw set. It'll be risky, Jia. They've locked down everything since Brody took over, but I'm in. What they did to you is wrong. While Kai worked his magic on the development data front, I embarked on my own research. My legacy game maintenance role involved sifting through years of Pixel Forge's technical documentation. A tedious task that offered the perfect cover for my true objective. I began meticulously poring over old design documents, marketing, contracts, and archived financial reports related to monetization models. My expertise in game engine architecture and system optimization, honed over years of perfecting complex game mechanics, proved invaluable. I wasn't just looking for isolated incidents. I was searching for patterns, for anomalies that hinted at a deeper conspiracy, a systemic corruption of the game itself. It didn't take long to find the first thread. It's tucked away in a series of obscure financial reports for Project Aethelgard. I noticed a consistent, significant deviation in projected versus actual development costs. Critical high-cost features that were essential for the game's core experience. Things like the dynamic AI and advanced procedural generation were being systematically underfunded, yet the allocated budget lines remained consistent. This was highly unusual. Why would Pixel Forge be compromising the integrity of its flagship game, especially one touted as a genre redefiner? My investigation extended beyond the digital realm. I started observing Brody Kane's behavior, the subtle shifts in his routine, the people he met with. He had always been ambitious and a bit flashy, but now there was a new layer of recklessness, an almost giddy extravagance. Brand new luxury cars, private jet charters for investor pitches, lavish parties at exclusive venues, all far beyond the generous but not obscene salary of a head of marketing and monetization. He was spending money like water, as if an endless faucet had suddenly opened. The pieces began to click into place. The underfunding and budget manipulation weren't accidental. They were deliberate. But to what end? And for whose benefit? Then came the first critical piece of evidence. Kai, after weeks of painstaking clandestine work, managed to recover a series of deleted bug reports and corrupted server logs from a staging environment used for Aethelgard's pre-release builds. It's a cover-up, Jia, he whispered to me during another clandestine arcade meeting, a very sophisticated one. It looks like someone was deliberately suppressing critical bug reports, especially those related to the core AI and the procedural generation engine. They're knowingly pushing a broken game. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just about a stolen game. This was product fraud and a massive consumer deception on a grand scale. The logs detailed instructions from an internal network address that traced back to a secure executive terminal. A terminal that a quick online cross-reference revealed was primarily used by none other than Silas Croft himself. The motive became terrifyingly clear. Brody Kane wasn't just taking credit for Aethelgard. He was systematically compromising its quality and other core game features by funneling development funds away from critical systems, then falsifying performance data, all under Croft's direct authorization. The global engagement division was nothing more than a sophisticated smokescreen, a legitimate-sounding cover for a massive, systematic product fraud that could lead to consumer outrage and long-term damage to the company's reputation. The true antagonist wasn't just Brody Kane. He was a willing participant, corrupted by greed. The trail of falsified reports and budget diversions led me deeper into Pixel Forge's financial records and development pipelines, revealing a series of highly questionable cost-cutting measures approved by a single powerful figure, Silas Croft himself. The CEO, the man who had supposedly built Pixel Forge into an industry titan, was complicit. He wasn't just allowing Brody to cut corners. He was orchestrating the entire scheme, compromising game quality for immense personal profit, bleeding Pixel Forge dry with inflated marketing budgets, and then planning to jump ship with a fabricated golden parachute. He was selling out his own company, his own employees, and ultimately his loyal fan base. For a personal fortune, the moral complexity of my revenge deepened. This wasn't just about my stolen game anymore. This was about exposing a monumental fraud that threatened the livelihoods of hundreds of Pixel Forge employees, the very stability of the studio, and the trust of millions of eager players. My personal vendetta had merged with a larger fight for justice, a duty to expose the systemic rot and prevent a catastrophic launch. My next step in skill development involved honing my digital forensics and consumer protection law expertise. I spent my evenings devouring online courses, studying legal precedents in intellectual property theft and deceptive trade practices, and utilizing open-source intelligence tools related to software fraud. I learned about chain of custody for digital evidence in game development, the intricacies of consumer protection regulations, and the specific reporting requirements for fraudulent product launches. I downloaded specialized software, practiced data recovery techniques on corrupted game builds, and built secure, encrypted backups of every single piece of incriminating evidence I found. I needed to ensure that when I struck, my evidence would be irrefutable, untraceable, and devastating. The obstacles were immense. Pixel Forge's internal security systems were robust, designed to keep external threats out, not to detect internal rot at the highest levels. Every move I made, every file I accessed, left a digital footprint. I had to be meticulously stealthy, employing advanced masking techniques and leveraging Kai's deeper access to completely obfuscate my activities within the development network. Time was also a critical constraint. How long would Croft and Brody continue their scheme before Aethelgard's disastrous launch exposed them first? Or before they absconded with their ill-gotten gains? As I delved deeper, I discovered that Brody had already begun executing preliminary moves against others within the studio who questioned his new monetization strategies. Leo Chang, a brilliant but outspoken lead programmer who had raised concerns about performance degradation in recent Aethelgard builds, was suddenly transferred to an obscure, non-essential experimental VR department with no funding. Dr. Anya Sharma, the sharp head of Pixel Forge's internal legal compliance, who had quietly questioned discrepancies in licensing agreements related to the game's core engine, found her department's budget mysteriously slashed and her authority severely curtailed. These were secondary antagonists, minor players in the grand scheme. But their swift and brutal demotions served as a chilling reminder of the power Croft and Brody wielded. Their downfall would be a necessary part of the larger comeuppance. By the end of my deep dive, I had a meticulously compiled dossier. It contained irrefutable evidence, encrypted communications between Croft and an offshore shell corporation, detailed financial transactions linking the marketing budget diversions to undisclosed accounts, and the recovered bug reports showing the systematic suppression of critical game-breaking flaws in Aethelgard. I had the smoking gun, not just for my own stolen game, but for a systematic, dangerous product fraud that could betray millions of players. The knowledge filled me with a quiet, icy satisfaction. They thought they had sidelined me, dismissed me, forgotten me. They were about to learn that they had awakened a storm. The dossier was no longer just a collection of files. It was my ultimate weapon. Heavy with the weight of impending justice and a profound sense of responsibility to the gaming community. Wielding it required more than just courage. It demanded a strategy as intricate and precise as the game engine I once designed. My legacy game maintenance server room, once a dusty symbol of my corporate purgatory, had become my personal war room. The oppressive silence of the isolated space now felt like a shroud, concealing the meticulous planning unfolding within. My revenge plan had 3 core pillars: irrefutable proof, public exposure of deception, and legal accountability. I needed to not only expose their fraud, but also ensure their professional and financial ruin, leaving no room for escape. This wasn't about a fleeting moment of satisfaction. It was about ensuring a complete and irreversible downfall, proportional justice that fit their monstrous betrayal and the immense deception they were about to inflict on millions of players. The first step was to secure the irrefutable proof, the digital evidence. I had meticulously collected the encrypted communications, the financial logs detailing budget diversions. The falsified bug reports was my most potent weapon. I knew that once unleashed, Croft and Brody would scramble to discredit me, to erase their tracks, and to suppress the truth. Therefore, I needed multiple redundancies and an untraceable distribution mechanism. I encrypted the entire dossier, creating several identical copies. One copy was uploaded to a secure, decentralized cloud storage service, accessible only via a complex time-delayed decryption key. Another was placed on a series of anonymous USB drives, each carefully hidden, in disparate, secure locations, with instructions to be revealed only if I were to mysteriously disappear or be silenced. My final and most daring move was to craft a sophisticated script that would, at a predetermined time, automatically email the encrypted dossier to a select group of recipients, the entire Pixel Forge Studios board of directors, a prominent investigative journalist specializing in consumer fraud and the gaming industry, known for their deep connections to major gaming news sites, and the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, the ultimate regulatory authority for consumer protection and deceptive advertising. The email would contain a single chilling subject line: urgent warning, Aethelgard's deceptive launch and core flaws. Next was public exposure of deception. It wasn't enough for them to face legal ruin. Their carefully constructed reputations needed to crumble publicly, swiftly and spectacularly, ensuring that their dangerous practices were known to the very players they sought to exploit. My plan involved a multi-pronged approach to ensure maximum exposure and public awareness of the game's critical flaws. I compiled a concise, damning summary of their activities, detailing the theft of Aethelgard's original design, the systematic underfunding of core mechanics like my AI and procedural generation, and the widespread suppression of critical bug reports orchestrated by Croft and Brody. This summary, along with key excerpts from the dossier and specific examples of game-breaking bugs from the falsified reports, would be leaked anonymously to several major gaming news outlets: IGN, GameSpot, Eurogamer, and popular gaming forums and content creators known for their integrity and influence. I also set up anonymous social media accounts, meticulously crafting a narrative that would disseminate the information to a wider audience, creating a firestorm that no corporate PR machine, no matter how powerful, could extinguish. The goal was to paint a picture of deliberate, calculated betrayal, not just against me, but against the integrity of Aethelgard, the trust of its investors, and the anticipation of its millions of fans. Finally, legal accountability. While the public shaming would be swift and devastating, the legal process would be slow and arduous. My objective was to provide the FTC, the Department of Justice, and federal prosecutors with an undeniable case so meticulously documented that they would have no choice but to pursue criminal charges. The encrypted dossier, once decrypted, would serve as the cornerstone of their investigation. I even went so far as to research the specific statutes and regulations that Croft and Brody had violated consumer fraud laws, deceptive trade practices, acts, and intellectual property infringement statutes, ensuring that my evidence directly addressed each legal requirement, making their prosecution inevitable. My preparation involved not just technical skill development, but also mental fortitude. I knew this would be a high-stakes game, potentially involving massive corporate retaliation. I practiced my demeanor, honed my explanations, and anticipated every possible countermove from Croft and Brody. I needed to appear calm, collected, and utterly credible when the time came, a silent, unyielding force of reckoning. Along the way, obstacles and complications began to emerge, testing my resolve. The first came from Ms. Anya Singh, the head of Pixel Forge's corporate communications, a master of spin and damage control. She'd begun asking inconvenient questions about unusual data access patterns within the legacy game maintenance network. Questions that, if pursued, could inadvertently derail my plan or expose me prematurely. I had to subtly guide her, feeding her just enough innocuous information to keep her distracted, but not enough to reveal the full scope of my investigation. It was a delicate dance, avoiding her scrutiny while simultaneously leveraging her inherent desire to protect the company's image. Albeit for her own ends, my preliminary moves against secondary targets began with Leo Chang. After his transfer to experimental VR, Leo had quietly continued his own analysis of Aethelgard's performance degradation, albeit with severely limited resources. I anonymously sent him a small encrypted packet of information, a breadcrumb trail that subtly corroborated his existing concerns about the game's inconsistent performance and linked them to specific recent builds. The information was carefully curated to be deniable, yet compelling enough to reignite his investigation from his newly hobbled position. Leo Chang, a tenacious and ethical lead programmer, would become an unwitting yet powerful ally in stirring the pot internally. His official complaints, once he followed the trail I'd laid, would create internal pressure that would further expose Pixel Forge's vulnerabilities from within. Another key preliminary move involved Dr. Anya Sharma. Dr. Sharma, the head of Pixel Forge's internal legal compliance, whose budget was slashed, harbored deep frustration towards Brody Kane's new opaque licensing agreements and monetization schemes. I anonymously reached out to her, posing as a concerned former colleague, and subtly suggested she look into discrepancies in licensing royalty payments and third-party contract clauses related to Aethelgard. These discrepancies were, in fact, small, carefully introduced anomalies I had planted digital breadcrumbs, designed to expose the fraudulent financial arrangements without directly implicating me. Dr. Sharma, with her sharp eye for compliance, would inevitably discover the underlying problems, further eroding confidence in Brody's division and raising red flags about their adherence to legal standards. The primary obstacle, however, remained Silas Croft and Brody Kane themselves. They were growing bolder, more arrogant in their perceived invincibility. News leaked that Croft was finalizing a massive golden parachute retirement package, signaling his imminent departure from Pixel Forge, a final greedy grab for his fortune, before the game's true state was revealed. This accelerated my timeline significantly. I couldn't afford to let him escape with his ill-gotten gains and leave the wreckage behind for others to clean up. As the final pieces of my plan fell into place, a subtle moral dilemma gnawed at me. Was I crossing an ethical line? It's my pursuit of justice morphing into something darker, something akin to their own manipulative and deceptive tactics. I recalled the crushing weight of betrayal, the shattered trust, the systematic dismantling of my career, and the terrifying prospect of a beloved game being launched as a broken, cynical product. The answer was clear. This wasn't about malice. It was about restitution, about accountability, and above all, about protecting the players. It was about exposing truth and demanding accountability where the system had failed, where the very foundations of trust and creativity had been eroded, threatening not just a company, but an entire community. The night before the planned execution, I felt a strange, unsettling calm. My isolated server room, once a symbol of defeat, now pulsed with a quiet, dangerous power. Every contingency had been considered, every detail meticulously planned. The automated email script was armed, the anonymous leaks prepared, the evidence secured, the stage was set. Tomorrow, the carefully constructed facade of Aethelgard's launch would shatter, and Croft and Brody would finally face the reckoning they so richly deserved. Their reign of corporate impunity built on lies and compromised creativity. It's about to end, and I, the Sidelined developer, would be the silent architect of its spectacular crash. The digital clock on my desktop flickered to 3 a.m. It was the precise moment my automated T script was set to detonate. My finger hovered over the execute key, a surge of adrenaline mixing with a cold, unwavering resolve. This was it. Culmination of weeks of meticulous planning, the moment of truth. With a steady breath, I pressed the key. The screen flashed, confirming the command. My carefully crafted emails containing the encrypted dossier and the damning summary were now hurtling through cyberspace, destined for the entire Pixel Forge Studios board of directors, the prominent investigative journalist, and, crucially, the Federal Trade Commission (FTC). Simultaneously, the anonymous leaks to major gaming news outlets, IGN, GameSpot, Eurogamer, and popular gaming forums went live, a digital ripple effect that would soon become a tsunami. Engulfing the studio, the immediate aftermath was an eerie silence, broken only by the rhythmic hum of my computer. But I knew the storm was brewing. Spent the next few hours monitoring the initial impact. By 6 a.m., the first tremors began. Social media, fueled by my anonymous leaks, was ablaze. Hashtags like hashtag AETHELGARD scam, hashtag Pixel Forge fraud, and hashtag broken game began trending, snowballing with each passing minute. The investigative journalists, known for their relentless pursuit of corporate misconduct in gaming, had already published a preliminary expose, referencing unprecedented allegations of deceptive marketing and critical development flaws at Pixel Forge Studios, sending shockwaves through the gaming industry. The corporate response was swift and predictably defensively aggressive. By 8 a.m., Ms. Davies, the head of HR, sent out a company-wide memo, vaguely referencing baseless rumors originating from a disgruntled former employee, and urging everyone to remain calm and focus on our unwavering commitment to quality game development. Silas Croft, visibly agitated, appeared on a hastily arranged internal video conference, attempting to project an image of calm authority while his eyes darted nervously. He dismissed the allegations as a malicious attempt to discredit Aethelgard's groundbreaking potential. His words, intended to reassure, only fueled the speculation and panic among the ranks, particularly those aware of the game's actual state. The real escalation began when the board of directors convened an emergency meeting. My internal ally, Dr. Anya Sharma, had already submitted her meticulously documented concerns about the unusual budget diversions and suspicious licensing agreements to the board's audit committee, a process I had subtly initiated weeks ago. Now, with the anonymous dossier in their inboxes, her previous warnings took on a terrifying new weight, transforming her from a sideline compliance officer to a key whistleblower. The board, realizing the gravity of the situation and the potential for severe regulatory action, massive consumer backlash, and devastating reputational damage, immediately launched an internal investigation, a furious, desperate scramble for answers and damage control. My plan began to face its first significant challenges. Croft and Brody, recognizing the source of the leak, immediately launched a frantic counteroffensive. My access to the PixelForge network was swiftly revoked. My work laptop, now a digital smoking gun, was remotely wiped clean. It was a calculated move designed to destroy any remaining evidence and isolate me. But I had anticipated this. My secure backups, safely stored off-site, were beyond their reach, untouchable, waiting for the proper moment to be revealed to the authorities. Then came the legal pressure. I received a scathing cease and desist letter from PixelForge's legal team, threatening severe legal action for breach of contract, defamation, and corporate sabotage, demanding I retract all false and malicious statements. It was a standard intimidation tactic designed to instill fear and silence, but it was unnerving. I immediately consulted with my independent lawyer, carefully chosen for their expertise in intellectual property and whistleblower protection. They advised me to remain silent publicly and to cooperate fully with any official investigation, while fiercely protecting my sources and, crucially, my meticulously gathered evidence. The major twist came from an unexpected quarter. Kai Sato, my loyal junior programmer, contacted me, his voice strained and panicked. "Jia, they're trying to pin it on me. They found my unauthorized access logs to the development servers. They're saying I was the one who leaked everything." Hearts sank. Kai, my trusted ally, was now in the crosshairs, a potential scapegoat for their elaborate fraud. This was an unforeseen complication. A desperate attempt by Croft and Brody to shift blame and protect their own crumbling hides. I immediately formulated a contingency plan. I instructed Kai to feign cooperation, to provide just enough innocuous information to keep them occupied, but not enough to incriminate himself fully. I also prepared a separate encrypted data packet specifically for Kai's lawyer, containing irrefutable evidence that would prove his limited, indirect involvement and unequivocally shift the primary blame back to Croft and Brody. I wouldn't let Kai go down for this. The corporate environment at PixelForge descended into utter chaos. The planned Aethelgard launch was abruptly postponed indefinitely, a thinly veiled euphemism for a canceled release. The company's stock price plummeted, mirroring the studio's freefall. Major publishing partners began suspending contracts and demanding immediate explanations, fearing massive losses and irreparable damage to their own reputations. The Global Engagement Division, once touted as the future, became a toxic liability, a symbol of their fraud. Leo Chung's internal reports about the alarming performance degradation and critical bugs in Aethelgard, exacerbated by my subtle strategically placed glitches in their development builds, were now reaching senior management, further discrediting Brody Kane's supposed expertise in exposing the shoddy nature of their compromised product. The gaming community, unforgiving and swift when it came to deceptive practices, was delivering its own brutal verdict online. The final confrontation arrived swiftly, not with a dramatic showdown in a boardroom, but with a series of calculated, converging hammer blows that echoed throughout the global entertainment industry. The investigative journalist, armed with my dossier, broke the full, explosive story. PixelForge CEO implicated in-game fraud. Aethelgard's design compromised. Players deceived for profit. The article meticulously detailed the offshore shell, corporations, the systematic underfunding of core game mechanics, the falsification of bug reports, and Silas Croft's undeniable complicity. It cited anonymous internal sources with irrefutable, time-stamped evidence, subtly hinting at my involvement without explicitly naming me, amplifying the mystery and the devastating impact. The Federal Trade Commission (FTC), acting on the detailed evidence I provided, announced a formal, wide-ranging investigation into PixelForge Studios for consumer fraud, deceptive advertising, and intellectual property theft. Subpoenas were issued and federal agents began arriving at PixelForge's offices, seizing documents, confiscating computers, and questioning employees, sending shivers through the entire organization. Their primary concern was protecting consumers from a potentially fraudulent product launch simultaneously. The board of directors, facing shareholder revolt, mass client exodus, and the very real threat of severe legal penalties and a catastrophic public relations disaster, moved swiftly to oust Silas Croft. His golden parachute retirement package evaporated into thin air. He was stripped of all authority, his corporate empire crumbling around him, his name forever stained by scandal. Brody Kane, thoroughly discredited and facing internal inquiries from multiple companies where he desperately sought employment, was swiftly terminated. The public humiliation was complete and absolute. His name, once synonymous with rising ambition in gaming, is now inextricably linked to corporate malfeasance and, far worse, a reckless disregard for player trust. A pariah in the industry. The satisfying resolution came not with a single bang, but with a series of decisive legal and professional blows that resonated throughout the gaming world. Croft, stripped of his position, facing imminent criminal charges, watched helplessly as his assets were frozen and his reputation irrevocably shattered. Brody, ostracized and unemployable in the gaming sector, became a cautionary tale of ambition, unmoored from ethics. Pixel Forge Studios, deeply wounded, entered a period of extreme turmoil, but the exposure of the fraud, while agonizing, allowed for a genuine chance at rebuilding, a chance to cleanse itself of the poison within and reestablish its commitment to quality and player trust. My revenge was not about destroying the studio, but about purging the corruption that had festered at its very core, saving it from a far worse fate, a disastrous launch that would have alienated millions and tarnished its name forever. I felt a strange, profound mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. The revenge was delivered, precise and devastating in its impact. The justice was proportional. They had stolen, they had lied, they had betrayed, they had deceived millions. And now they had lost everything: their power, their wealth, their reputations, and their futures. The gaming landscape, once a treacherous minefield of betrayal, felt strangely clear, almost cleansed. My skills, once suppressed and dismissed, had proven to be the ultimate weapon, a force for undeniable truth and consumer protection. The fallout from Aethelgard's cancellation and Pixel Forge's scandal reverberated across the gaming world. The studio, once a celebrated innovator, faced a monumental task of regaining trust. Silas Croft and Brody Kane's downfall was absolute, their names synonymous with corporate betrayal and consumer deception. Croft faced federal prosecution for fraud and deceptive practices, his once impenetrable empire crumbling under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Kane, completely blacklisted from any reputable role in the gaming or marketing industry, vanished from public life, his career irrevocably destroyed. Pixel Forge Studios itself, while deeply scarred, began a painful but honest restructuring. The board, now under intense scrutiny, appointed a new CEO, a veteran game developer with a reputation for integrity and a deep love for the craft. This new leadership initiated a sweeping overhaul of development practices, financial oversight, and marketing ethics. Aethelgard was officially put on an indefinite hiatus, a painful but necessary step to acknowledge the harm done. Instead, the focus shifted to transparent communication, genuine apologies to the community, and a commitment to rebuilding. While financially devastating in the short term, this public cleansing offered a fragile glimmer of hope for the studio's long-term survival and redemption. My role in the unraveling remained officially unacknowledged. Yet the quiet whispers persisted throughout the gaming industry. I was the unnamed architect of their undoing, the ghost in the machine who had laid bare the rot at Pixel Forge's core. My legal counsel ensured my anonymity was meticulously protected, navigating the intricate legal landscape while providing Crucial insights to federal investigators. Kai Sato, thanks to the undeniable evidence I provided to his legal team, was fully exonerated and internally lauded for his integrity. He chose to remain at Pixel Forge, now empowered and respected, becoming a key figure in the studio's new era of ethical development. Leo Chang and Dr. Anya Sharma, their prior warnings tragically validated, found their departments reinstated and expanded, becoming linchpins in the studio's renewed commitment to genuine innovation and player trust. Reflecting on the moral and professional implications of my actions was a process that continued long after the market crash subsided. Had I crossed an ethical line? Undoubtedly. I had acted outside conventional corporate frameworks, employing tactics that were, by definition, subversive. But my motivation was never malice for its own sake. It was a profound pursuit of justice, a desperate measure when all official channels had failed, when the very system designed to protect had proven complicit in betrayal and, far worse, in deceiving millions of players. My revenge was proportional, a mirror reflecting their own deception back at them, scaled to the immense harm they nearly inflicted. They had stolen my life's work, lied to their investors, and shamelessly planned to exploit their fan base. My response, while unconventional, had been absolutely necessary to expose a far greater wrong and to force accountability where none would have existed. The greatest validation came not from external praise, but from an internal shift, a profound sense of self-reclamation and purpose. My professional competence, once undermined and dismissed, was now undeniably proven, not just in game development, but as a strategic force capable of dismantling complex corporate structures. The intricate planning, the meticulous digital forensics, the cold, precise strategic execution all demonstrated a level of skill that far surpassed simple programming. I had become a master strategist, capable of dissecting vulnerabilities and orchestrating their downfall with quiet, devastating effectiveness. The personal cost had been significant. The emotional toll of living with the secret, the constant vigilance, the fear of exposure, the moral tightrope walk, it had been immense. But with the resolution came a profound sense of personal closure. The knot of anger and betrayal that had tightened in my chest for months finally loosened, replaced by a quiet, deep satisfaction. I wasn't defined by what had been stolen from me, but by what I had done to reclaim my agency, to ensure accountability, and to witness justice delivered. My career advancement was not immediate, nor was it within the traditional corporate structure. The new CEO of Pixel Forge, deeply impressed by the detailed anonymous dossier that had saved the company from utter ruin, and sensing my true capabilities, extended a unique offer, a senior advisory role, specifically tasked with rebuilding the studio's technical integrity, ethical development pipelines, and player trust initiatives. I also spearheaded the creation of a new independent player advocacy and quality assurance board, empowering developers to raise concerns without fear of reprisal. It was a return to the very place where my passion had been betrayed, but one filled with immense purpose and a deep sense of poetic justice. Forging a new standard for the gaming industry beyond Pixel Forge, my experience had equipped me with an unparalleled skill set, one highly sought after in a world increasingly vulnerable to corporate malfeasance. I began discreetly consulting for other gaming studios and tech companies on intellectual property protection, ethical monetization, and internal fraud detection, using my hard-won knowledge to help them identify and mitigate vulnerabilities from within. It was a new chapter, one built on the ashes of betrayal, but also on the strength of my own resilience, strategic intelligence, and unyielding commitment to truth. My future possibilities felt boundless, infused with the hard-won knowledge of what I was capable of. I had proven that true expertise transcends titles and corporate hierarchies. I had learned that justice sometimes requires unconventional methods. and that the quiet determination of one person can dismantle an empire of deceit. The scars of the betrayal remained, but they were now badges of honor, a testament to my strength and unwavering commitment to truth. The stolen game had ultimately become the instrument of their downfall, and the catalyst for my own unexpected powerful rise, leaving a legacy of integrity in an industry that desperately needed it.